Welcome to another episode of Healing Money Talks. My name is Emma Lucy Wall, and as always, I invite you to put your phone on airplane mode. Put the kettle on, make yourself a warm drink, and find somewhere warm and relaxing to sit and listen deeply as this conversation unfolds. You never know what you might hear. So my special guest today is Vander. Jeff is a quiet spiritual teacher, a way-shower of enlightened enterprise, and a trusted advisor committed to co-creating a society filled with awakened people, communities, and organizations. During these times of disruption and great opportunity, Jeff sees through complexity to the illumined possibilities. He delights in empowering people to find their way. As a spiritual guide, Jeff assists mentees in developing their own source connection and capabilities for awakened living. In his coaching and in consulting practice, he works with the technologies of higher consciousness to bring forth clarity, love, and support for initiatives that are in service to true nature. Jeff is a member of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle and the Global Compassion Council of Charter for Compassion International. He is co-founder of Sourcing the Way, Enlightening Journeys and Expeditions, and the Consciousness of Money. He also serves as a board director for Alliance for the Earth, Garden of Light, and Source of Synergy Foundation. I first met Jeff on one of the Consciousness of Money retreats. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Emma. It's lovely to be here with you and everyone who's listening today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. And I know you've had a very rich and interesting journey with money. So would you like to just tell us where it all began, where it's been, and where it's heading?
Well, I'd be delighted to. Where it all began. Well, I grew up in a situation where there was a fair amount of abundance. So I took money for granted and then found myself well positioned in the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, such that I was able to recreate the lifestyle of my parents. I bought a house, had not one, but two cars, had to have a four-wheel drive so I could go off-roading, as if I would do that very often, and hot tub and the good things in life. What I discovered was it didn't bring me any more happiness to have more money. And there are studies that show if one earns less than a certain amount, life is harder, and so well-being tends to be reduced. But I was well over that amount, and I wasn't experiencing any additional joy or fulfillment. So what happened is I actually rejected money. I thought perhaps maybe I bought into the narrative that money brings happiness, but that wasn't the case. So I said, this doesn't work, and sort of threw money away, energetically and also literally. And thus began a very interesting journey of becoming more conscious about money, what money really is, and coming to appreciate what money can do in the world, all the good things that money can do when it's stewarded mindfully. And a number of years went by where I might describe myself as a bit of a monk, living without, doing without, an ascetic period of renunciation. And that has its place on the spiritual path for sure. I didn't know I was on the spiritual path until afterwards. And it's interesting how my relationship with money has reflected where I've been on the journey of awakening. So there was the period of renunciation, and then there was the period of discovering, well, that doesn't work very well either. And yet, when the money wasn't there, I was always supported by life. So I developed a trust in not just my own resourcefulness, but the deep source of value and the deep source of life and well-being. So it was actually very useful to have to resort to finding the source of it all. So from that process of discovering and awakening to true nature, I I became much more attuned to how life is moving because I had to pay attention to the currents. I had to know where there was opportunity. And I learned to feel a resonance for where I needed to go, where I was invited, you could say, invited by spirit to be, and how I was invited to be and to show up. So I practiced over a number of years, still with a very lean budget, mind you, but I began to discover some principles for dancing with life, even when the money isn't there. And then as I worked with individuals and organizations and continue to awaken myself and then to help other people to awaken to the truth of who and what they really are, an interesting thing started to happen, which is I started to earn money again. Only now with a great deal of appreciation and respect for for not only the power of the forms of money that circulate within our world, but the beingness of money, the aliveness of money. And it took yet a few more years. So now we're talking about 15, 16 years of ups and downs and side to side experiences with having money and having less money and using credit cards and um, all of that, right? And then I met Sarah McCrum,
Mhm.
a dear friend and author of a book called Love Money, Money Loves You. And in our very first conversation, she mentioned the book, and she hadn't yet come out with the book, let's say, because the book came in a very inspired way, a kind of channeling process. And that's, of course, still unusual for the mainstream, but eventually we were both inspired to offer a retreat called The Consciousness of Money on my trip to Australia in October, November 2017. So this is um, going on 3.5 years ago. And it was a 3-day experience that we essentially improvised, in which we talked about our relationships with money, um, what was coming up for us, perhaps as blocks to um, having more of it, dancing with it, having businesses that are thriving, being thriving ourselves, not only in terms of our finances, but in every way. And the theme of relationship with money very quickly became foreground. And one of the discoveries amongst the initial group of participants is that how we are with money is often very similar to how we are with our close ones, our intimate relationships. And that was heart opening and actually very moving for quite a few people. We also, during the first Consciousness of Money retreat, we played with money and we had various um, games, processes to experiment with money, have conversations with money, um, ask questions related to how we can be better with money and really support it as well as it supporting us. And so it was a blast, needless to say. And that was the first Consciousness of Money because everyone who participated said, gosh, we'd really like to do that again. And so all but one of the initial participants was able to come back for the second Consciousness of Money a few months later. And in total, we've now had 21 of these deep dive, intensive, because they are intense, but they're also light and joyful
Mm.
retreats on 3 continents. So maybe 4 if you count Australia, Europe. I did a few things in India, more of a mini Consciousness of Money than North America, both in the US and Canada. So uh, we didn't expect to have this body of work emerge and um, to reach quite a few people in this
Really.
way, and absolutely, for which I'm very grateful. And every time we had a retreat, we all went deeper. So Sarah and Nico, her husband, and I, we all deepened into this exploration of money. And I would say, speaking for myself, that I became much more awake through the inquiry
Mhm.
into what is it really? And it might have been in the first retreat or the second retreat, but somebody asked the question, what is money really? And what came to me is divine, God, Lakshmi, the abundance aspect of divinity. So the roots of money go very, very, very deep. far deeper than coins, um, dollar bills, pound notes, digital balances that we might be looking at on a screen. And yeah, so there's money with a capital M, which is what money really is in its essence, and beingness. And because we discovered that we can have a conversation with money, money will talk to us if we ask, particularly if we ask a good question. And so there's the capital M money, and then there's the lowercase m money, which you might say are the forms of money. So coming back to the coins and the dollar bills or pound notes, etc. And the forms of money are evolving. We haven't always had pound notes, and in the future we'll have other systems that facilitate exchange in a more just and equitable and functional way. What we have today clearly isn't working very well, and that's why people are in many circles inclined to disparage money and try to, as I did almost 2 decades ago, reject money.
Mm.
But we're collectively finding out that it doesn't work to reject money, because what happens is in the process we're rejecting life. We're rejecting the energy that sustains life. We're rejecting the aspect of life that would love to deliver nourishing experiences and show us all the ways in which we're connected to one another. Something that money does, and I mean now both the capital M and the lowercase m money, something that money does very well is highlight the ways in which we're connected to one another. If you follow the money, you see it goes from person to person to person, organization to organization, through banks, but doesn't just sit there. It's always circulating. It's always doing something. And the more conscious we are with money, the more good money does. But importantly, money is fundamentally good. And I know this contradicts some spiritual teachings, which have their place, particularly in the long sweep of human development. There was a time when we had to be very clear, and we still need to be very clear that that our divine nature comes first. So worshiping a quantity of money is uh, destructive, and
Yeah.
we've seen that as well play out in our society. So so there's money as a force for good, and money is fundamentally good. When we talk to money, the message that comes through is loving. Always, always. I I can only think of one situation where there was someone who so hated money that he couldn't connect with it. Oh, and another situation where there was someone who was so afraid of money that what he visualized was, I believe, a gun. And that was a bit shocking, but that's two cases out of many hundreds, including indigenous peoples who have felt very oppressed by the colonial financial machine. And one man stood up at a workshop in Australia and said, "Oh my God, I see that money vibrates at the same frequency as love." And he told how he felt liberated from the the colonialism and the legacy of oppression in and among Aboriginal peoples. So there are far more examples. Statistically, we have to conclude that money must be good, because when we talk to money, what we get, even if we're a bit unsure about money, is a message of support. I'm here for you. You need to ask for me. You need to ask for what you want, what you would love to experience. But when you do, we can do a lot together. I'm fulfilled as you are fulfilled. I'm speaking from the point of view of money. So money really is this being, this consciousness. And the initial name that we had for the retreat, the consciousness of money, although it's kind of long when you spell it out, it's a long URL. It stuck because it's spot on. Money is energy, sure. That's more in the form realm of what money is. The various forms of money are forms of energy, and money is consciousness, and it's causal. There's something deep down in the roots of manifestation where money can get to work. And so when we're working with money, we're working with manifestation. As we become peaceful with money and develop some mastery around being able to relate to money in a life aligned and affirming way, then we're able to, yes, we're able to manifest in our life. But it isn't just for the sake of manifestation, because then that brings us back to the potential downside or risk of placing the things above our true nature, above the divine within us and around us. So there's a delicate dance, but what manifestation teaches us is our own creative power.
Mm.
So as we dance with money and we learn that we can in fact have the things that we would love to experience, then we realize our own creative nature and we go deeper and we go deeper and we discover the oneness. We discover that there's no separation between us and money. And therefore we are money, which is a somewhat radical thing to say. And we can go further. So I haven't left your original question, which is talk about your journey with money. Where the journey has taken me is realizing that I am money and in fact that I'm the cause of money. And that's a bit of a leap, and we can talk about how to get there. But if we accept oneness, if we accept the truth that there can be no separation, then whatever is deep down in the roots of our experience that's causing our experience is also what we are. So I'm the cause of money. I'm the source of money. Now, the ego, if it tries to hold on to such statements, that's problematic again. So when we make these statements uh, and we make them truly, and there's no charge and there's no grasping and, oh, look at me, I'm special. But when we can relax into, my essential nature is that which causes all that I see and experience, it causes money. Therefore, my creatorship is revealed, and I discover, aha, well, I'm giving these experiences to myself, mediated by money. Thank you, money, which is the name of a course Sarah offers. Thank you, money, for being such a faithful friend and at times servant and at times teacher. Because when I've been out of alignment, money has been there to say, hey, this ain't working. And one way that is experienced is through the apparent lack of money. But like I said before, ultimately, no matter how far I strayed, I was always supported by life, and there was always enough. There was always a way. And I have to say, I'm so grateful that I've learned, with the help of money, that life is a game that I cannot lose. There are a lot of different outcomes, but I cannot lose. And actually, when I really get that, when we really get that, now I'll say this is a general truth, when we really get that we cannot lose at life, and that which fears scarcity, fears not having enough, um, that relaxes, and all the energy that went into maintaining those beliefs and those fear
Mm.
structures is released, and that energy can do an awful lot of good in the world. So I invite everyone who's listening. I continue to invite myself practically every day to deepen in this awareness of money as a spiritual teacher and as a sacred ally.
As you were speaking, Jeff, I was wondering if we could, maybe not at this point, but maybe you would tag on, maybe you could guide us into a conversation with money as you would have done on the retreats, because that is quite an unusual experience, and I think it would be a really rich one for our listeners. I know
Yes,
your so your life now. I mean, you don't have the home and the two cars anymore, do you?
I have many homes. Um, I have a car that I can use whenever I need to in the Western USA. So I'm living lightly in a sense, but but I do involve money in my life, and in particular, 2020 was a banner year for the business. Um, my company and my work is about transformation,
Mm.
and so that's what we need right now, very obviously. And so business has been booming, and of course, I hold these times with a tenderness because they've been very challenging. And unfortunately, it's the challenges that often convince us collectively that we do need to change and upgrade our system. So um, my plan is not to go out and buy a house or buy a car. At any moment, I could, even during these pandemic times, be called to another place, to another country. And so I need to maintain a light footprint. But it is nice to have the financial ability to buy things and go places. Um, and I expect that will increase because it's important to really embody the teaching. It would be one thing to talk about money and say money is fantastic, money is your sacred ally, and not have it.
Yeah.
So that's not a very powerful example, even if I use compelling language. So to actually be the messenger, to live the meaning of the teaching is important. And there isn't some magical number that I'm aiming for because I know there'll always be enough. What I also know is the more that I create, and I'm not taking from anyone else. That's the thing about money. It's not a zero-sum game. There's actually an infinite amount of what money really is. The finite forms, they're challenging, but we can work with them, particularly if we're in relationship with the essence of money. So the more money I can create, and I want to say create more than manifest. I want to say because there's a deep process going on that is fundamentally creative. It is actually new under the sun. So the more money I can create, the more beauty I can bring, and the more people and organizations I can support. And I look forward to amplifying that greatly in the coming years.
Can you explain what that means? Because I think for people sitting at home, they might think, well, the only way to create money is to go and print it in a money mint. How how could the man or woman in their home, how do you go about creating
Yeah,
money with a capital M?
right. Well, if it's new, then it may come in a new form. So, for example, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. I'm actually personally not a big fan of cryptocurrencies, but I see they're very important right now in expanding our understanding of what money is and actually creating new money. So if you think about what's happened with Bitcoin, the initial valuation of a Bitcoin was tiny. And then
Mm-hmm.
as more people became interested in it, the value of a Bitcoin went up and up and up. And now it's, continuing to go up and down, but the trend line is pretty steep. So, and positive. So a lot of money has been created through the collective interest in Bitcoin. Now, my concerns around Bitcoin are that it's very technical, and so there's the risk that it creates a new elite of people who are technology literate and kind of love to play the technology game. That's fine though. I just see there are more forms of money that are going to be created that have a kind of expansive quality. So there's much more to come beyond Bitcoin. And so if you, the listener, are not drawn to playing in the crypto game, it's fine. There's a lot more coming, a lot more ways to create money through existing systems and new systems that are emerging now. Another way to create money is, and this is more esoteric, but, and it's coming to me now, maybe for the first time, to really hold the being of money in your heart. Like if money is a being, then imagine that it has a form, and imagine that your heart, which is vast anyway, not only the physical heart, the spiritual heart, is holding this being. And in your heart, this being blossoms, flowers, expands, overflows. So energetically, what's happening is like, well, you're actually bringing more energy into the universe. The physicists will say that's not possible, but there's a lot that is beyond the three-dimensional universe of space and time and electromagnetic radiation and matter. So in our heart, we have the capacity to bring new energy into the universe. And one way that this internal process is experienced outwardly is that we find it easier um, to earn money. And I would recommend not worrying too much about how, because it will be new. But we will be shown, you will be shown by listening to life. And this is one of the early lessons that I had to learn when I didn't have money. Really listen carefully for where to be, because money is trying to come to us all the time.
Mm.
There are so many pathways that money could take to find us. Now, all too often the pathways are blocked because we haven't opened ourselves to receive money, or we're expecting money to come in certain ways that are conventional.
Yeah.
So open up wide after becoming receptive to money. Open the mind to new possibilities for how money can find you, and money and life will tell you exactly what to do. And it takes a little bit of time. So patience is an essential ingredient. One of my favorite quotes, which is from A Course in Miracles, is only infinite patience brings immediate results. And just maybe 3 days ago, yes, 3 days ago, I was talking to a friend who introduced me to A Course in Miracles way back when. And he had a vision and he said to God, I will do your bidding. I will go through hardship because it was a difficult time for him for as long as it takes. I release any attachment to having this vision, which is a beautiful vision of a house by a lake with a basketball court, fulfilled. It can take as long as it takes. I surrender to your will, basically, sort of Christian terminology. And what happened is within 3 days, he had a signed contract on a house by a lake. It was remarkable. One thing led to another. And I don't want to say more because I'm waiting for him to write the book. But an illustration of what happens when we actually let go of the time consideration. That's harder when we're living hand to mouth and we don't know if we have dinner. So there is another approach for that scenario. But when at least the basics are covered for now, when we can have a vision and then let go of attachment to when that vision comes true, it's a vast accelerator.
And actually, very few people in the Western world at the moment are living that hand to mouth. Most people, we have got all the basics covered, really, haven't we? If we have the luxury of listening to this summit on £100 worth of phone or computer, then we've probably got a roof over our heads, food in the cupboards, and I think there is that always looking for the next. That we do really come from a place of lack, even though we have this incredible abundance. I remember on the consciousness of money retreat that you said something about businesses. Any business that doesn't have heart or love in its name or in its modus operandus, then they're going to be in trouble because more. And it was interesting that you came straight into the heart there when I asked you to describe how we create more money. I know I'm a terror for the house. I do get very attached to house, and it is true that the more we release, the more the universe does just deliver.
Very true. And love is essential. Love is largely how it works. And love is, I would even say that money is love. And we can talk about it from various angles.
I have a
What are you
book
going
here,
to show us? Money is love. Beautiful. Okay.
and she's one of my speakers.
All right. Well, the case has already been made. I can say no more on that topic. And when we go into our hearts, we have so much more power than when we stay only in our minds. Now, ultimately, the little m money and the capital M money are one. The heart and the mind are one. So all of these distinctions do need to be held lightly, but there has been a tendency in our culture to stay in the thinking, the intellect that loves to dissect things. And when we dissect wholeness, we create at least the appearance of separation. And that is very disempowering. And that is why we have experiences of lack, even when we're swimming in abundance.
Absolutely. Thank you. Before we started the recording, you had your diagram. I love the way that you bring so much. Sometimes people just, some of the concepts that we're talking about are quite etheric, and it's quite nice sometimes to see them written down. So
I'm sharing the diagram you're referring to, which in a lot of ways summarizes the story that I told. So the story is helpful because it's my lived experience. So what I can talk about now is coming from a place of some authenticity. So this is a diagram of stages of the enlightenment of money. So before I said the consciousness of money, didn't want to reuse that term. And I also feel that this particular map introduces some additional ideas. So it's complementary and supplementary. So if we start at the top, we have separating from money. So when I rejected money, I was separating myself from money.
Yeah.
And many people do that, be it in religious traditions or within, let's say, New Age spirituality, or within the movement for social justice and transformation, where money is regarded sometimes as problematic. You know, for whatever reason, there has been a tendency to separate from money, which means we don't have the resources to make the changes that we seek in the world. Now, we can be clever, we can be crafty, we can get a lot done for a little, and that has its place. But if we're coming from the energy of separation, then we're holding ourselves back big time. So for me, a spark happened at some point, which is related, I believe, to Sarah's book and the consciousness of money, which is well, I can connect consciously with money. I can have a conversation with money. I can say, hey, money, how's it going? What's up? I don't know if that's a high quality question, but money, time and again, responds. And so there's a connection. And then when there's a connection, there's the possibility of relationship. So then money is not only a force, not only an energy, it's a being I can relate to. Money is an ally, as I said before. So when we're relating regularly, we can have a partnership. So this diagram is showing us a process of deepening into partnership with money, which is very powerful relative to many of the modes people operate in with money. And we can still go further. So when we partner with money, when we realize we're actually not separate from money, particularly when we get non-separation as a fundamental spiritual teaching, then the spark, a subsequent spark occurs, which is, aha, well, there's one. I'm not separate from money. I'm one with money. Money's one with me. I am money. Money is me. Money is love. I am love. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hmm. Okay. So I get that a lot of the law of attraction teachings are pointing here.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this morning during the sacred shower time, and really appreciating that even if it isn't languaged this way, the practices of um, attracting abundance into our lives work because underneath whatever we might be doing and saying, there's a growing appreciation that we must be deeply connected, and we're actually one with that which we seek and that which we ask. And with practice, we realize oneness with money. And we realize that we can be more intentional about how we use money, and we can start to direct money. So I love to talk about sending money on missions.
Mm-hmm.
Money, please go, do this or that, which would be really useful. And that can, of course, take the form of donating to a charity. It also takes the form of paying it forward with the next generation. I have clients who pay various amounts based on their ability. So I love having the option and opportunity to pay it forward and to direct money. Um, and it is by, in this case, or example, not giving money directly, but giving my love and my support to people who then can go and amplify their work in the world. And by virtue of money being in the equation, albeit in a different way, good things happen. So I send money on missions in lots of ways, knowing though that by virtue of being one with all, I'm one with the roots of my own being. I'm one with the roots of manifestation in its entirety. I have the ability to go to the source because I am also the source. And from this place, I can source money. It's like reaching down into a well and lifting up my hand with water. Water is representation of money because it's always flowing. And if it's not flowing, it's evaporating, which I think we could have an interesting conversation about. So sourcing money and then ultimately creatorship, like I said before, discovering and not just kind of intellectually grasping, but knowing in an embodied way that I am creating money. I'm creating the entirety of my life and experience. And at different levels of consciousness, that shows up in different ways. Um, but it's always true that we're creators. We might be creating something that seems to be small in our lives. We might be manifesting what we think of as a small thing, which is practice. And as we practice, our capacity expands, our sense of self expands, our the consciousness and our roots, the consciousness of our roots deepens, and we discover that we are deeply creative, profoundly so, divinely so, and as long as we're here on Earth having the embodied experience, the deepening continues. So the good news is it's a beautiful, joyful process that just gets better and better.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome. So
I wouldn't be surprised if quite a lot of the people who are listening might be at that first stage of separating from money. And I'm on a mission, as I have been for some time, to get healers in particular to come and to accept and to connect with money and to receive money and to empower themselves through that connection. So would you fancy taking us into a little, you get to use your bowl at the end as well if you do that.
taking us into a little
Conversation with money, a little connection with money.
Very good. Let's sit comfortably and feel our feet on the ground. It's always good to be grounded. And also relaxed. So at this point, we're ready to have a conversation with money. Yes, money. And let's start simply. Just ask money, are you there? Money, are you there? And my experience consistently is that before I finish asking the question, I already have a sense of, yes, I'm here. And the first few times, money was pretty funny, saying, hey, glad you're finally listening. So however it is for you, ask money, are you here? And when you feel connected in whatever way, it may be that you hear a voice. It may be that you have a felt sense in your body. You may have a vision of money walking in through the door. The less I say, the better, actually, because you will have your own experience that is right for you. And once you feel connected with money, you can ask more questions. How can I have a better relationship with you? That's a good one. And see, we're here. Money's response. You can also ask money, how would you like to connect with me? Come to me, flow to me. At this point, we can start to have fun with money. We can really be playful. I've had the experience of inviting money to tea and just bantering. So this can be your home play to continue your conversation with money and ask any question, actually. You might get very detailed answers. You might get more of a felt sense, and sometimes the answers will come later as you go about your daily activities. You might stumble upon an article or something that sparks in your mind an idea, which could be the answer for how money would like to flow to you, for example. And I would encourage you, once you feel connected to money, to do this on somewhat of a regular basis, at least whenever you feel challenged around money. But why wait until you feel challenged around money? How often do you talk to a family member? You can have a conversation with money that often and much more easily because there's no need to pick up a phone. Money is right there, closer than your nose, waiting to meet you, greet you, and gift you with the abundance of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and if you read Sarah's book, you will hear more of those messages. Money does want us to engage with it, doesn't it? Every Everybody who talks about money and abundance has the same experience, that the more you connect with it, and that disconnect and the fear is exactly what pushes it away. It's law of attraction. If you're fearful, you will get more fear. But if you open and you relax, it just makes all that space for it to flow.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for your richness and your wisdom. There is a link below the video to Jeff's free gift, which will be more
An
deep.
empowerment. It will help you to go deeper in your relationship with and knowing of money in its essence so that you can dance with it. You can dance with life. And I would love to hear how it goes. So let's stay in touch.
Once again, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Blessings.
To you.